I always thought I was in control of my life, my identity, my choices, my path. As a trans influencer, I had built a world of followers, likes, and validation. But beneath all the filters and the carefully curated posts, there was a part of me I tried to hide. The fear, the loneliness, the questions that even the brightest spotlight couldn't illuminate. I never imagined that my final moment would come so suddenly, during what was supposed to be a routine surgery. As I lay on that cold, sterile table, feeling the anesthesia take hold, I sensed something was wrong. My heart faltered, and the panic hit in a rush. I remember the rushing sounds, doctors shouting, machines beeping, but it all seemed distant, like watching a movie from far away. Then, the darkness came. But it wasn't just the absence of light, it was like I had slipped out of time and space itself. Suddenly, I was no longer in the operating room. Instead, I found myself bathed in a light so pure and radiant it overwhelmed my senses. It wasn't the harsh glare of the sun or the artificial brightness of hospital lamps. This was a warm, loving light that seemed to envelop my entire being, filling me with a peace I had never known. In the midst of this light stood a figure, majestic, gentle, and powerful all at once. He held a crown in one hand and a cross in the other, symbols I recognized but had never truly understood. His eyes met mine, full of compassion and authority, as if he held the whole universe in his gaze yet cared deeply for me, personally. I was overwhelmed, confused, but strangely unafraid. It was as if everything I had ever struggled with, every battle I had fought within myself, was being acknowledged and embraced without judgment. The presence radiated acceptance not based on who I had been, but on who I truly was at my core. In that moment, I realized this was no ordinary experience. It was a meeting with the divine, an invitation to a truth far beyond the life I knew. And though I was still grasping to understand, one thing was clear: I was not alone. As I stood bathed in that divine light, the figure before Metha, one holding the crown and the cross, began to communicate, not with words, but through a deep knowing that resonated inside my soul. I understood the crown represented authority and victory, but it was unlike any earthly crown I had ever imagined. It wasn't a symbol of power through dominance or fame, but one of sacrifice, humility, and ultimate love. The presence told me, in a way beyond speech, that this crown was meant for those who overcome the deepest trials, not through force, but through surrender and faith. It was the crown of true identity, the eternal self, the soul free from the chains of fear, rejection, and misunderstanding. I thought about my life, the struggles I endured as a trans person, the judgment I faced, the battles with self-acceptance. I had thought I had to prove my worth constantly, to fight for recognition and love in a world that often seemed hostile. But here, in this sacred space, all that striving was laid down. I was loved not for what I showed the world, but simply for who I was created to be. A flood of emotions washed over Mirleaf, sorrow, gratitude, and a deep yearning to understand this mysterious love that accepted me wholly. I was confronted with the reality that my identity was more than the labels I had worn, more than the online persona, more than the pain and the pride. It was rooted in something eternal and unchanging. Then came a profound revelation. This divine presence had not rejected me, nor condemned me. Instead, he had carried my burdens, understood my heartaches, and invited me into a deeper healing. The crown in his hand symbolized not judgment, but a promise that I, and everyone who struggles with identity, fear, and pain, could find true belonging and honor in him. I was humbled, overwhelmed by a grace so vast I felt I could never deserve it, yet it was freely given. The light around me pulsed with warmth and acceptance, and I knew this was the love I had been searching for all my life, even when I denied its existence. Though I yearned to stay in this peace forever, I sensed a mission and invitation to return, to share this transformative truth with the world, to live a life reflecting the love and acceptance I had found beyond death. As I prepared to leave that heavenly realm, the crown remained a symbol etched in my heart, a reminder that true identity is found not in the world's eyes, but in the eyes of the one who made us all. The moment I felt myself pulled back from that radiant, peaceful realm was bittersweet. The pull to stay wrapped in that divine embrace was almost unbearable, but I understood that my journey was not complete. I was being sent back not just to a body weakened by surgery, but to a world that still felt cold, harsh, and often unforgiving. The promise of the crown and the love I had witnessed had to be lived out in the reality I once knew. As consciousness returned, the sterile walls of the hospital room came rushing back, the harsh fluorescent lights, the rhythmic beeping of machines, the anxious faces of nurses and doctors clustered around me. My heart was weak, my body fragile, but my spirit was forever altered. Inside, I carried a light no one else could see, a love no one else could understand. Yet, returning meant facing the judgment I had always feared. As a trans influencer, I had battled not only my own insecurities but the harsh opinions of others, the trolls, the critics, even the well-meaning but misunderstanding family and friends. Now, after my experience, I knew the truth of unconditional love, but the world around me was not yet ready to embrace it. I struggled silently with the loneliness that had plagued me for so long. The internal battle between wanting to shout from the rooftops about the love and acceptance I had found, and fearing rejection and disbelief, raged fiercely. Would people listen? Would they believe me? Or would I be dismissed as delusional, desperate, or worse, a fraud? My online followers expected the confident, polished persona, not the vulnerable soul wrestling with questions of faith and identity. The pressure to maintain that image was suffocating, yet I also felt called to authenticity, to break down walls and share my true story. It was a tightrope walk between two worlds, the digital stage and the spiritual awakening within. At times, despair threatened to overwhelm me. How could I reconcile the pain of my past, the scars of rejection, with the boundless love I had seen in that heavenly vision? Could I forgive myself and others? Could I find peace amid the chaos? But even in my darkest moments, the memory of that crown, the light, and the cross held me steady. It whispered a promise that healing was possible, that my story was not just about me, it was a beacon for others lost in the shadows. And so, with trembling hands and a renewed heart, I began the journey to live that promise, to be a witness of the love that transcends labels, pain, and fear, a love that crowns every soul with dignity and grace. Returning to my body was only the beginning of a battle far greater than any I had faced before. The near-death encounter with Jesus holding the crown and cross left me forever changed, but it also unleashed an intense internal struggle. The person I had been, the confident, self-assured trans influencer, was now in conflict with this new spiritual awakening that demanded honesty, humility, and surrender. Doubt crept in like a relentless shadow. Was this experience real, or just a trick of a failing brain? Could the love I felt be genuine, or was it an illusion? My mind, trained rigorously in skepticism and critical thinking, resisted the idea of faith. The logic I had built my life on demanded proof, evidence, certainty, yet here I was, grappling with a truth that defied all that. Fear followed closely behind doubt, fear of rejection from my community, my followers, and even myself. Would embracing this divine love mean losing the identity I had fought so hard to claim? Would those who supported me see me as a traitor to the very cause I championed? The social media world was brutal and unyielding, quick to judge and slow to forgive vulnerability. But beneath the doubt and fear lay something stronger, a deep yearning for peace and authenticity. The encounter had awakened in me a hunger for healing that no amount of likes, followers, or validation could satisfy. I longed to be whole, to be loved unconditionally, to be free from the chains of self-doubt and societal judgment. I began to explore faith quietly, cautiously reading scriptures, praying awkwardly in silence, seeking understanding. Each step brought new revelations and a growing sense of hope. I discovered that Jesus' crown was not a symbol of exclusion, but inclusion, not condemnation, but mercy. Slowly, acceptance began to take root. Acceptance of myself as I was flawed, struggling, yet beloved. Acceptance of the transformative power of love that transcended labels and identities. Acceptance that faith did not erase my past, or negate my experiences but gave them new meaning and purpose. This inner transformation was painful and beautiful. It meant letting go of pride, embracing vulnerability, and trusting in a love so vast it could hold all my fears and doubts. It was a rebirth, a new identity forged not by the world, but by the one who crowned me with grace. Through prayer, reflection, and community, I found strength. The battle within was fierce, but the promise of that crown, the eternal symbol of love and victory, became my anchor. I was no longer alone. As the days and weeks unfolded after my miraculous near-death experience, I began to see my life through an entirely new lens. The crown I saw in Jesus' hand was no longer just a symbol. It became a personal calling. I realized that my purpose extended far beyond gaining followers, likes, or online influence. My journey was now about becoming a witness, a living testament to the transformative power of divine love and acceptance. This shift was both exhilarating and daunting. The social media world I had thrived in demanded perfection, image, and constant validation. Yet, I knew I had to be authentic, even if that meant exposing my vulnerabilities, doubts, and newfound faith to an audience that might not understand or accept it. It was a risk that could cost me everything I had built, but the weight of the crown in my spirit gave me courage. I began to create content that was raw, honest, and deeply personal. I shared my near-death experience, my encounter with Jesus holding the crown and cross, and the radical love that had shattered my old beliefs. I spoke openly about the struggles of identity, faith, and the search for true belonging. The response was mixed. Some followers embraced my story with tears and messages of hope, while others reacted with skepticism, criticism, and even hostility. But I was no longer seeking approval from the world. I was driven by a higher purpose to bring light to those lost in darkness, to offer hope to those wrestling with identity and acceptance, and to break down walls that separated faith and the LGBTQ+ community. I wanted to show that God's love is not limited by labels or past mistakes, but is vast enough to embrace everyone. My life became a testimony of grace in action. I engaged with communities I had never reached before, participated in dialogues, bridging faith and LGBTQ+ experiences, and even collaborated with pastors and spiritual leaders who were open to understanding and healing. Through it all, I felt the crown's weight as a sacred responsibility to live not for myself, but to serve others with compassion, courage, and truth. At times, the journey was lonely. The old world I left behind sometimes called me back with whispers of doubt and fear, but the light I had seen in that heavenly moment burned brighter within me. It was a constant reminder that I was chosen, loved, and crowned not by human standards, but by divine grace. The surgery that nearly ended my life became the birth of a new mission. The trans influencer, who once sought worldly validation, was reborn as a messenger of hope, healing, and unending love. And this was only the beginning. Embracing this new path brought me face to face with unexpected challenges and opposition. The social media realm, once a source of affirmation and community, became a battleground where my evolving beliefs were scrutinized, misunderstood, and often attacked. Friends and followers who had once supported my identity as a trans influencer questioned my faith journey. Some accused me of betrayal, others labeled me confused or misguided. The trolls and critics, relentless as ever, seized upon my transformation as ammunition to discredit me. Yet the greatest opposition wasn't always external. I wrestled internally with lingering fears and insecurities, the shame ingrained by years of rejection, the worry that I had lost my voice or my place. Was it possible to reconcile my identity with the faith that had so radically changed me? Would I be accepted by the church, the LGBTQ+ community, or even myself? The memory of the crown in Jesus' hand became a beacon during these dark times. It symbolized not just victory, but the endurance and grace required to withstand trials. The crown was a reminder that faith often calls us to walk through fire, to face ridicule, doubt, and pain for the sake of truth and love. I found solace in prayer and scripture, passages that spoke of God's steadfast love and promises to those who suffer. I connected with others who had faced similar journey strands, people of faith, believers wrestling with identity and acceptance. Together, we formed a fragile but powerful community of resilience and hope. In moments of deep despair, I recalled the radiant light and the loving gaze of Jesus during my near-death experience. That encounter was no hallucination. It was a transforming reality that anchored my soul beyond the shifting tides of opinion. Through counseling, spiritual guidance, and the support of a few trusted allies, I learned to hold both my identity and faith with grace. I began to see that the two were not contradictory, but could coexist in a complex, beautiful harmony. My authenticity became a witness to the possibility of healing and reconciliation in a world too often divided. Though the path was fraught with pain and sacrifice, I embraced it fully, knowing that the crown's promise was not just for glory, but for perseverance and love that conquers all. The journey was far from over, but I no longer walked it alone. As I continued on this path of faith, identity, and public witness, I experienced a profound transformation that went deeper than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just my external circumstances or social media presence that changed, it was the very core of my being. The encounter with Jesus holding the crown and cross had ignited a fire of grace and forgiveness within me that melted away years of pain, bitterness, and self-condemnation. I came to understand that grace is not simply unearned kindness. It is a powerful force that heals, restores, and liberates. I began to forgive myself for the harsh judgments I had held, for the times I had felt unworthy, broken, or unseen. I learned to forgive those who had hurt me, whether through ignorance, cruelty, or misunderstanding, not to condone their actions, but to free my own heart from the chains of resentment. This process was neither quick nor easy. There were days when the weight of past wounds threatened to overwhelm me. Memories of rejection, hurtful words, and loneliness surfaced with brutal clarity. But in those moments, I returned to the light I had seen in the near-death experience, the light that radiated unconditional love, acceptance, and peace. Through prayer, meditation, and reflection, I felt my heart expand. I realized that the crown Jesus held was not only a symbol of victory over death, but also a call to live as a beacon of that same love and forgiveness in the world. My life was no longer just about surviving or proving myself, it was about embodying the grace that had saved me. I began to see every interaction as an opportunity to extend that gracito patience, struggling with their own identities, to friends grappling with faith, to strangers wounded by life's hardships. My influence shifted from online metrics to genuine human connection, from superficial affirmation to deep, transformative presence. The fusion of my identity as a trans person and a believer became a testimony to the possibility of wholeness. I was no longer torn between two worlds, but standing firmly in the truth that I was loved, crowned, and called to a higher purpose. This newfound grace infused every aspect of my life with humility, strength, and compassion. It gave me courage to speak openly about my journey, to challenge divisions, and to advocate for love that transcends labels and boundaries. The crown was not just a reward waiting in heaven. It was a living call to walk in love, forgiveness, and truth here and now. Looking back on the path that began on that operating table, the moment my heart faltered and I slipped into the light, I see a journey of radical transformation, unlike any I could have imagined. The atheist trans influencer who clung to identity and validation from the world has been forever changed by the encounter with Jesus holding the crown and cross, a symbol of love, sacrifice, and true authority. The crown I saw was not a mere emblem of earthly power, but a sacred calling to live a life marked by courage, grace, and unwavering faith. It was a reminder that no matter how broken or lost we may feel, there is a place of belonging and honor for every soul willing to embrace truth and love beyond human understanding. Today, I walk forward, not as a perfect person, but as one deeply aware of the fragility and beauty of life. My mission is clear: to be a bridge between worlds, often seen as opposites between faith and identity, science and spirit, struggle and healing. I strive to share the message that God's love transcends every label, and that our true worth is found in the eyes of the one who crowns us with eternal grace. Though challenges remain skepticism, misunderstanding, and personal trials, I am sustained by the light I glimpsed beyond death. That light continues to guide me, reminding me that the journey of faith is ongoing, filled with both trials and triumphs. My story is not unique. Many walk paths of doubt, pain, and search for meaning. To those souls, I offer this testimony as a beacon of hope. You are loved beyond measure, you are not alone, and there is a crown of glory awaiting all who persevere in love. The social media platforms may come and go, followers may rise and fall, but the eternal kingdom is unshakable. In that kingdom, every soul, no matter their past or present, is crowned with dignity and grace. This is not the end, but a new beginning. The trans influencer who died on the operating table has been born a new crown in love, called to serve, and forever changed by a grace that conquers all. And as long as I draw breath, I will carry that crown with humility and hope, sharing the light that saved me with a world in desperate need of healing.